November 8, 1944. The Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Private First Class Robert Chen of the 28th Infantry Division crouched in a waterlogged foxhole, his breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. Around him stretched an endless maze of dense evergreens, their branches heavy with snow and the weight of war. In his numbed hands, he gripped his M1 Garand, the 11.2-pound rifle that had become an extension of his body through months of combat across France and into the Reich itself. Beside him, partially buried in mud and pine needles, lay a German Karabiner 98k bolt-action rifle, its sleek wooden stock unmarred by the brutal conditions. The captured weapon weighed only 8.6 pounds, nearly 3 pounds lighter than his Garand. For a soldier who had carried his rifle through hedgerows, across rivers, up mountains, and through forests for over 5 months, 3 pounds felt like the difference between exhaustion and endurance. Chen picked up the German rifle, tested its balance, worked its smooth bolt action, and peered through its precise sights. Then he made a decision that would be repeated thousands of times across the European theatre, from the beaches of Normandy to the heart of Nazi Germany. He set the Kar98k aside and kept his Garand. That choice, multiplied across hundreds of thousands of American infantrymen in countless combat situations, would reveal fundamental truths about warfare that transcended weight, about firepower that mattered more than portability, and about technological superiority that couldn't be measured on a scale. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The German Wehrmacht had marched into World War II, carrying what many considered the finest bolt-action rifle ever manufactured. The Karabiner 98k represented the culmination of over 50 years of German military rifle development, a direct descendant of the legendary Gewehr 98 that had armed Imperial German forces in the First World War. Its bolt action was smooth, precise, and nearly silent in operation. Its accuracy was legendary among soldiers on both sides of the conflict. Its weight made it easier to carry during the long marches that characterized German military doctrine. Yet American soldiers, given the opportunity to trade their heavier M1 Garands for captured Kar98ks, almost universally refused. The mathematics of this refusal would tell a story about firepower, industrial capacity, and the nature of modern warfare that neither side fully understood when the war began. The story of these two rifles begins not on the battlefield, but in the design philosophies and industrial systems that created them. The Karabiner 98k was born from German military tradition stretching back to the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. The original Gewehr 71, adopted by the German Empire in 1871, established principles that would guide German rifle design for the next 70 years. Accuracy at long range, robust construction, and reliable bolt action became the hallmarks of German military rifles. By 1898, Paul Mauser had perfected his bolt-action design in the Gewehr 98, a rifle that would become the standard by which all other bolt actions were measured. The Gewehr 98 featured a 5-round internal magazine, a powerful 7.92x57 mm cartridge, and legendary accuracy. German soldiers carried it through the trenches of the First World War, where its long-range precision proved valuable in the static warfare that characterized the Western Front. After Germany's defeat in 1918, the Treaty of Versailles severely restricted German military production. The Weimar Republic's small Reichswehr could maintain only limited armaments, yet Mauser continued development, creating the standard model rifle in the 1920s for export markets. This design incorporated improvements learned from 4 years of trench warfare. When Adolf Hitler began rearmament in violation of Versailles in the 1930s, the Wehrmacht needed a standard rifle quickly. Rather than develop something entirely new, German ordnance officers chose to adopt a shortened version of the Gewehr 98. The result was the Karabiner 98 Kurs, or Kar98k, the designation Kurs meaning short in German. Officially adopted on June 21, 1935, the Kar98k became the standard rifle of the Wehrmacht, the Waffen-SS, and other German military formations. The Kar98k fired the 7.92 X57 mm. Mauser cartridge, known to Allied forces as 8mm Mauser. This powerful round fired a 198-grain bullet at approximately 2,500 feet per second, generating roughly 2,560 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. The cartridge had been developed in 1888 and refined over decades. It offered excellent long-range performance, with an effective range exceeding 500 meters in trained hands. The round could penetrate substantial cover and maintained lethal velocity at distances where many other cartridges lost effectiveness. The rifle itself measured 43.7 inches in overall length, with a 23.6-inch barrel. It weighed 8.6 pounds unloaded, or approximately 9.2 pounds with a full magazine, bayonet, and sling. The turned-down bolt handle allowed easier carrying, while the straight bolt offered excellent leverage for operation. The internal magazine held 5 rounds loaded via 2 5-round stripper clips. The bolt action was a controlled feed design, meaning the cartridge was captured by the bolt's extractor as soon as it left the magazine. This prevented double feeding and ensured reliable extraction even if the rifle was operated at odd angles. German military doctrine emphasized marksmanship. Every Wehrmacht infantryman received extensive training in rifle shooting, often firing hundreds of rounds during basic training. The emphasis was on accurate, aimed fire at identified targets. German tactical thinking, influenced by the experience of the First World War, assumed that most infantry combat would occur at ranges of 300 to 600 meters. At these distances, the Kar98k excelled. A trained German soldier could engage targets with precision that Allied soldiers found remarkable. The rifle's sights were graduated to 2,000 meters, though this represented theoretical rather than practical range. The tangent rear sight could be adjusted for elevation, and windage adjustments were possible, though rarely made in combat. The front sight was a simple post, easy to acquire in various lighting conditions. Manufacturing quality varied throughout the war, but generally remained high by military standards. Mauser produced Kar98ks at their Oberndorf factory, but production soon expanded to other major contractors. J. P. Sauer and Sohn, Irma Werker, Berlin Lübecker Maschinenfabrik, and others joined production. German industry produced approximately 14 million Kar98ks between 1935 and 1945, making it one of the most produced rifles in history. Each rifle was stamped with manufacturer codes, date codes, and proof marks. Quality control remained relatively consistent even as the war situation deteriorated. The German emphasis on precision manufacturing meant that Kar98ks, produced in 1944, still functioned reliably, though finish quality declined and parts showed rougher machining. The rifle's design incorporated several features that German soldiers valued. The bolt could be disassembled easily for cleaning without tools. The barrel was chrome-lined for durability. The stock was walnut or laminated wood, offering durability in various climates. The rifle could mount a variety of accessories, including rifle grenades, optical sights, and specialized ammunition. German sharpshooters using scoped Kar98ks achieved legendary accuracy, with some documented kills exceeding 1,000 meters. These specialized marksmen became feared by Allied forces, their precise fire from concealed positions inflicting casualties out of proportion to their numbers. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, American military thinking had evolved in a radically different direction. The United States Army entered the First World War in 1917 armed primarily with M1903 Springfield rifles, themselves heavily influenced by Mauser designs. The Springfield was an excellent bolt-action rifle, arguably superior to the Kar98k in many respects. Yet American military planners recognized that bolt-action rifles had limitations in modern warfare. The volume of fire that could be delivered by a semi-automatic rifle offered significant tactical advantages. During the First World War, American Expeditionary Force officers noted that German machine guns could deliver devastating firepower that rifle-armed infantry could not match. The concept of increasing individual soldier firepower became a priority for warmint. American ordnance development in the 1920s, John Garand, a Canadian-born firearms designer, joined Springfield Armory in 1919. His task was to develop a semi-automatic rifle that could serve as the standard infantry weapon. The challenges were immense. The rifle needed to be reliable under all conditions, accurate enough for military service, powerful enough to remain effective at battlefield ranges, simple enough for conscript soldiers to maintain, and durable enough to survive years of hard use. Garand's early designs failed testing. Changes in ammunition specifications forced complete redesigns. Budget limitations during the Great Depression threatened the entire program. Conservative officers questioned whether soldiers needed or could handle semi-automatic fire, yet Garand persisted, driven by a vision of transforming infantry tactics. By January 1936, after years of development and testing, the United States Army officially adopted the M1 Garand as its standard service rifle. This decision represented a revolution in military affairs. The United States became the first major military power to equip its entire infantry with semi-automatic rifles. While other nations experimented with semi-automatic designs, none committed to universal adoption. The M1 Garand used a gas-operated rotating bolt mechanism. When fired, propellant gases were tapped from the barrel through a port near the muzzle. These gases drove a long operating rod that unlocked and retracted the bolt. The bolt extracted and ejected the spent cartridge case, then chambered a fresh round from the 8-round en-bloc clip as the operating rod returned forward under spring pressure. The bolt rotated to lock, and the rifle was ready to fire again. This entire cycle occurred in fractions of a second, allowing a trained rifleman to fire 8 aimed shots as quickly as he could pull the trigger while maintaining his sight picture. Narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The M1 Garand fired the 30-06 Springfield cartridge, the same powerful round used in the M1903 Springfield bolt-action rifle. This cartridge, designated 30-06 because it was a 30 caliber round adopted in 1906, fired a 150-grain bullet at approximately 2,800 feet per second. The muzzle energy exceeded 2,700 foot-pounds, making it slightly more powerful than the German 8mm Mauser. The decision to maintain this caliber ensured ammunition compatibility across the American arsenal and preserved the long-range effectiveness that military planners demanded. The rifle weighed 9.5 pounds empty, 11.2 pounds loaded with an 8-round clip, bayonet, and sling. This made it significantly heavier than the Kar98k. The overall length was 43.6 inches, essentially identical to the German rifle, with a 24-inch barrel. The additional weight came primarily from the gas system, operating rod, and the more robust action required for semi-automatic operation. The M1's design prioritized durability and reliability over weight reduction. The receiver was machined from a single forging of ordnance steel. The barrel was heavy profile to withstand sustained fire. The operating rod was massive and virtually indestructible. The 2-piece walnut stock could withstand tremendous abuse. Every component was built to military specifications that emphasized function over form. The sights consisted of a protected front blade and a rear aperture sight adjustable for windage and elevation. The rear sight was graduated to 1,200 yards, though effective combat range typically fell far short of this distance. The aperture design offered faster target acquisition than traditional notch and post sights, particularly in low-light conditions. This would prove significant in the close-range fighting that characterized much of the European campaign. Production of the M1 Garand began slowly. Springfield Armory produced the initial rifles, with Winchester Repeating Arms Company joining production in 1940. War orders increased. By 1943, production had reached massive scale. The rifles coming off production lines underwent rigorous testing. Each rifle was test-fired, and critical dimensions were verified. Quality control maintained high standards throughout the war. American soldiers could trust that their Garand would function as designed. The manufacturing process embodied American industrial philosophy: standardization, interchangeability, and mass production. Every M1 Garand part was completely interchangeable with the corresponding part from any other Garand. An armourer could swap parts between rifles to repair damaged weapons or improve performance. This level of standardization, achieved through precision manufacturing at scale, represented a triumph of American industrial engineering. Training American soldiers to use the M1 Garand became a priority as the rifles entered service. Infantry training emphasized marksmanship, with soldiers firing hundreds of rounds during basic training. The semi-automatic action required different technique than bolt-action rifles. Soldiers learned to maintain sight picture while firing rapid strings of shots. They practiced reloading quickly, inserting fresh 8-round clips with the bolt locked back. They learned field stripping and cleaning, understanding that proper maintenance ensured reliability. The iconic ping of the ejecting en-bloc clip became familiar to every American infantryman. Some theorists worried that this distinctive sound would alert enemy soldiers that an American rifle was empty, creating a vulnerability. Combat experience would prove this concern largely unfounded, as battlefield noise overwhelmed such subtle sounds, and the reload could be accomplished in under 3 seconds by trained soldiers. By the time American forces landed in North Africa in November 1942 as part of Operation Torch, the M1 Garand had proven itself in limited combat. Marines carried Garands at Guadalcanal beginning in August 1942, where the rifle demonstrated effectiveness in jungle conditions. Reports from the Pacific confirmed that the semi-automatic action provided decisive firepower advantages in close-range combat. Yet the rifle remained unproven against German forces, whose military reputation remained formidable despite setbacks in North Africa and the Soviet Union. American planners wondered how the Garand would perform against Wehrmacht soldiers armed with the excellent Kar98k and supported by the fearsome MG-42 machine gun. The answer would come as American forces pushed through North Africa, landed in Sicily in July 1943, fought up the Italian peninsula, beginning in September 1943, and finally landed in Normandy on June 6, 1944. The first large-scale encounters between American infantry armed with M1 Garands and German infantry armed with Kar98ks occurred during the North African campaign from November 1942 through May 1943. In the desert warfare that characterized this campaign, engagement ranges often exceeded 300 yards. The open terrain favored long-range marksmanship, theoretically an advantage for the accurate Kar98k. Yet American forces quickly established fire superiority in infantry engagements. The reason became apparent to both sides: volume of fire. An American rifleman with an M1 Garand could deliver 8 aimed shots in the time a German rifleman with a Kar98k could deliver 2 or perhaps 3. This disparity transformed infantry tactics. German infantry doctrine emphasized fire and maneuver, with riflemen providing covering fire, while machine gun teams moved to dominate the battlefield. This doctrine had proven effective in Poland, France, and the early Soviet campaigns. Against American infantry, German soldiers discovered that American riflemen could deliver suppressive fire comparable to light machine guns. A single American squad with 8 M1 Garands could lay down 64 rounds of accurate 30-06 fire in seconds. This forced German infantry to seek cover, disrupting their maneuver and allowing American forces to seize initiative. The psychological impact proved as significant as the tactical effect. German soldiers reported feeling overwhelmed by American rifle fire, describing it as continuous and unstoppable. Captured German soldiers, interrogated by American intelligence officers, consistently mentioned the impressive firepower of American infantry. One German sergeant captured near Kasserine Pass in Tunisia told his interrogators that he had initially thought his patrol was facing a machine gun position, only to realize that 4 American riflemen were producing the volume of fire. This misconception occurred repeatedly throughout the war. German tactical reports frequently overestimated the number of American automatic weapons based on the volume of fire encountered. The Kar98k, despite its accuracy and reliability, simply could not compete with the M1 Garand in delivering sustained, effective fire. A trained German soldier could operate his bolt action quickly, perhaps achieving 15 aimed shots per minute under ideal conditions. A trained American soldier with an M1 Garand could easily achieve 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute, limited only by how quickly he could reload 8-round clips. American soldiers encountering captured Kar98ks examined them with professional interest. The German rifle's lighter weight appealed to infantry, who had marched hundreds of miles carrying heavy combat loads. The Kar98k's smooth bolt action and precise sights impressed American shooters trained to appreciate marksmanship. Some soldiers fired captured Kar98ks using captured German ammunition, finding the rifle pleasant to shoot and accurate. Yet virtually none chose to carry a Kar98k in combat instead of their M1 Garand. The reasons were immediately apparent to combat veterans. The Garand's firepower advantage outweighed any benefit from reduced weight. 3 pounds of extra weight seemed insignificant compared to the ability to deliver 4 times the volume of fire in any engagement. Combat experience taught soldiers that survival depended on firepower more than portability. The Sicily campaign in July and August 1943 reinforced these lessons. American paratroopers and infantry fighting German and Italian forces in the rugged Sicilian terrain found the M1 Garand's semi-automatic action invaluable. In the close-range fighting that characterized combat in Sicilian towns and mountainous terrain, the ability to fire rapidly without working a bolt proved decisive. German soldiers armed with Kar98ks could not match the volume of fire that American riflemen delivered in street fighting and house-to-house combat. After-action reports from Sicily consistently praised the M1 Garand's performance. Officers noted that individual American riflemen could suppress enemy positions that would have required squad-level fire with bolt-action rifles. The Italian campaign, beginning in September 1943, presented perhaps the most difficult terrain of the European war. The mountainous Italian peninsula, with its narrow valleys, steep ridges, and fortified positions, favored defenders. German forces exploited the terrain masterfully, establishing defensive lines that extracted maximum casualties from attacking forces. The Gustav Line, anchored on Monte Cassino, proved particularly formidable, resisting Allied attacks for months. In this grinding attritional warfare, the M1 Garand proved its worth repeatedly. American infantry attacking German positions could deliver suppressive fire while advancing, something impossible with bolt-action rifles. The semi-automatic action allowed soldiers to fire while moving, maintaining pressure on defenders. German soldiers defending these positions reported that American rifle fire was relentless, forcing them to remain in cover and limiting their ability to engage attackers effectively. The battles for Anzio from January to May 1944 revealed another dimension of the M1 Garand's superiority. The Anzio beachhead, surrounded by German forces occupying commanding high ground, became a killing ground where every American movement drew fire. In this desperate defensive battle, American infantry relied on their rifles to survive constant German counterattacks. The M1 Garand's ability to deliver rapid, accurate fire from defensive positions proved essential to holding the beachhead. German infantry attacking across open ground faced devastating American rifle fire that broke up assault formations before they could close to effective range. Survivors of these attacks reported that American defensive fire seemed impossible to overcome, a wall of bullets that no amount of courage could penetrate. Technical comparisons conducted by American ordnance officers in Italy provided objective validation of combat experience. Tests firing both rifles at various ranges confirmed that while the Kar98k might achieve marginally better accuracy in single-shot precision shooting, the M1 Garand's ability to deliver multiple rapid shots produced far superior practical accuracy in combat conditions. A rifleman who could fire 8 shots and adjust his point of aim based on impact observation would hit more targets than a rifleman firing single shots with slightly better inherent accuracy. The tests also examined reliability under adverse conditions. Both rifles were subjected to mud, sand, water immersion, and temperature extremes. The Kar98k's simple bolt action proved highly reliable, as expected from a design refined over decades. The M1 Garand's more complex gas system also proved remarkably reliable, continuing function under conditions that would have disabled more delicate weapons. The operating rod and gas system, while requiring more maintenance than a bolt action, tolerated fouling and contamination far better than skeptics had predicted. Ammunition considerations reinforced American advantages. The United States produced 30-06 ammunition in quantities that seemed impossible to German logisticians. American industry manufactured approximately 40 billion rounds of small arms ammunition during World War II, with billions of rounds being 30-06. Every American infantryman could expect unlimited ammunition resupply. Soldiers routinely carried 80 to 100 rounds of rifle ammunition, knowing that more would always be available. This abundance allowed American infantry to use ammunition liberally, engaging targets at extended ranges and firing suppressive bursts that German infantry could not afford. German ammunition production, while substantial, could not match American output. German soldiers received strict instructions to conserve ammunition, firing only at clearly identified targets. The contrast between American abundance and German scarcity affected tactical decision-making at every level. The Normandy invasion on June 6, 1944, brought American infantry armed with M1 Garands into direct confrontation with German forces defending Fortress Europe. The hedgerow country of Normandy, called bocage by the French, presented unique tactical challenges. The landscape consisted of small fields bounded by ancient earthen walls topped with dense vegetation, creating natural fortifications that favored defenders. German forces exploited this terrain expertly, positioning machine guns and riflemen to cover narrow lanes and field entrances. American infantry advancing through this nightmare landscape faced devastating fire from concealed positions. The M1 Garand proved essential to survival and eventual success in the bocage. American riflemen could deliver rapid fire to suppress German positions while other soldiers maneuvered to flank them. The semi-automatic action allowed soldiers to fire and immediately take cover, then fire again from a different position, creating the impression of multiple shooters and forcing Germans to spread their defensive fire. Private First Class Harold Baumgarten, who landed on Omaha Beach with the 29th Infantry Division, later described his M1 Garand as the weapon that saved his life multiple times during the Normandy campaign. Advancing through the hedgerows near Saint-Lô, Baumgarten's squad encountered a German position that opened fire at close range. Baumgarten returned fire immediately, his 8 rapid shots forcing the German soldiers to seek cover and allowing his squad to maneuver. With a bolt-action rifle, Baumgarten believed, he would have been killed before he could fire a second shot. This experience, multiplied across thousands of small unit actions, demonstrated the M1 Garand's decisive tactical advantage. The rifle transformed individual soldiers into sources of suppressive fire that shaped battlefield outcomes. German tactical adaptations revealed their recognition of American firepower superiority. Wehrmacht defensive doctrine evolved to emphasize concealment and ambush, avoiding prolonged firefights where American semi-automatic rifles could dominate. German soldiers were instructed to fire from cover, relocate immediately, and avoid exposing themselves to American rifle fire. These instructions acknowledged that German riflemen could not win sustained firefights against American infantry. The Kar98k's accuracy advantage meant nothing if the rifleman could not expose himself long enough to aim and fire carefully. American soldiers with M1 Garands could spray an area with rapid fire, forcing Germans to remain in cover, while other Americans maneuvered to better positions. The breakout from Normandy in late July 1944, Operation Cobra, showcased American infantry's ability to exploit tactical success. Once American forces penetrated German defensive lines, mobile warfare favored the side with superior firepower and logistics. American infantry advancing through France in August 1944 overwhelmed German resistance through sheer volume of fire and aggressive maneuver. German units attempting to establish hasty defensive positions found themselves outgunned by American riflemen who could deliver devastating fire while advancing. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic action proved ideal for mobile warfare, allowing soldiers to fight effectively while moving rather than stopping to work bolt actions between shots. During this rapid advance, American soldiers captured enormous quantities of German equipment, including thousands of Kar98k rifles. Supply lines stretched thin as American forces raced across France, and some soldiers faced temporary ammunition shortages. Yet even in these circumstances, American infantry refused to adopt captured Kar98ks as their primary weapons. Officers observed that soldiers might carry Kar98ks temporarily as backup weapons but invariably return to their M1 Garands as soon as 30-06 ammunition became available. The reason transcended mere familiarity. Soldiers understood viscerally that the Garand's firepower represented survival. Trading that firepower for a lighter rifle seemed suicidal to men whose lives depended on their weapons. The Battle of the Hürtgen Forest from September 1944 through February 1945 represented perhaps the most brutal combat American forces experienced in Europe. The dense forest, with visibility often limited to a few dozen yards, created conditions where traditional tactical principles collapsed. Soldiers fought at point-blank ranges through trees so thick that artillery often exploded harmlessly in the canopy overhead. German forces defending the forest used the terrain masterfully, establishing bunkers and fighting positions that could only be reduced through direct assault. The M1 Garand proved essential in this nightmare environment. American soldiers could deliver rapid fire at close range, the semi-automatic action allowing them to engage multiple targets quickly as German soldiers appeared from behind trees and fortifications. The stopping power of the 30-06 cartridge proved crucial, as wounded German soldiers rarely remained combat effective after being hit. Veterans of the Hürtgen Forest consistently praised the M1 Garand's performance in the worst combat conditions imaginable. Sergeant Jake McNeice of the 101st Airborne Division, who fought through the forest, later described the Garand as the only thing standing between him and death on multiple occasions. The rifle's reliability in mud, freezing rain, and snow amazed soldiers who had been trained to maintain weapons meticulously but often had no opportunity to do so in continuous combat. Garands, pulled from foxholes filled with water, still functioned when soldiers needed them. This reliability under extreme conditions validated every design decision that prioritized function over weight reduction. German soldiers captured during the Hürtgen Forest battles spoke with grudging respect about American rifle fire. Interrogation reports documented German acknowledgement that American infantry possessed superior individual firepower. One captured German lieutenant told his interrogators that his company had been trained to expect American infantry to be poorly trained and equipped with inferior weapons. The reality of facing M1 Garand-armed American soldiers had shattered these preconceptions. The lieutenant described American rifle fire as unrelenting, forcing his soldiers to remain in cover and preventing effective counterfire. He specifically noted that German soldiers with Kar98ks could not match the volume of fire that individual American riflemen delivered. The Battle of the Bulge from December 1944 through January 1945 tested American infantry under the worst possible conditions. German forces launched a massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest, achieving initial success through surprise and overwhelming force. American units, often surrounded and outnumbered, fought desperate defensive actions. The M1 Garand proved decisive in many of these small unit engagements. At Bastogne, American paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Division, surrounded by German forces, relied on their rifles to break up repeated German attacks. The volume of fire that American riflemen could deliver disrupted German assault formations and bought time for artillery and air support to arrive. The semi-automatic action allowed individual soldiers to hold defensive positions that would have required multiple riflemen with bolt-action weapons. Technical analysis after the Battle of the Bulge examined weapons performance in extreme cold. Temperatures dropped to near 0 Fahrenheit, conditions that caused numerous weapons failures on both sides. The M1 Garand proved remarkably cold-resistant, continuing to function in temperatures that froze lubricants and made metal brittle. The gas system, which some had feared would prove vulnerable to cold, actually performed better than expected. Soldiers learned to use minimal lubrication in extreme cold, allowing the rifle to function reliably. The Kar98k also performed well in cold conditions, its simple bolt action being naturally resistant to temperature extremes. However, German soldiers still faced the fundamental disadvantage of slower rate of fire, a disadvantage that became more pronounced in defensive actions where volume of fire determined survival. The final campaigns in Germany, from February through May 1945, saw American infantry fighting through industrial cities, across rivers, and into the heart of the Third Reich. Urban warfare in cities like Cologne, Frankfurt, and Nuremberg presented unique challenges. Buildings provided cover, but also concealment for defenders. Engagement ranges varied from point-blank in building interiors to several hundred yards across open squares. The M1 Garand excelled in this varied environment. American soldiers clearing buildings could fire rapidly at targets appearing suddenly in doorways and windows. The semi-automatic action allowed them to engage multiple targets without losing precious seconds working a bolt. The 30-06 cartridge penetrated interior walls and light cover that German soldiers used for protection. The crossing of the Rhine River in March 1945 demonstrated the complete superiority of American arms and logistics. Engineer units constructed bridges under fire, while infantry established bridgeheads on the east bank. The M1 Garand armed infantry secured these bridgeheads against German counterattacks, their superior firepower preventing German forces from driving Americans back into the river. As American forces fanned out across Germany, resistance became increasingly sporadic. German units surrendered in growing numbers, often citing the futility of fighting against overwhelming American firepower. Interrogation of these prisoners revealed consistent themes: admiration for American weapons, recognition of German industrial collapse, and acknowledgement that continuing resistance was pointless. Statistical analysis of casualty data revealed the M1 Garand's contribution to American tactical success. American infantry units consistently achieved favorable casualty ratios against German forces, typically inflicting 2 to 3 German casualties for every American loss. While superior artillery, air support, and logistics contributed to this advantage, the individual superiority of the M1 Garand played a crucial role. Every engagement where American riflemen faced German riflemen resulted in American victory when other factors were equal. The firepower advantage translated directly into lives saved and objectives achieved. Production statistics told their own story of industrial dominance. By war's end in May 1945, American factories had produced approximately 4.5 million M1 Garands. Springfield Armory and Winchester had maintained consistent quality throughout the war, with weapons produced in 1945 being functionally identical to those produced in 1936. German industry produced approximately 14 million Kar98ks during the entire war, but production quality declined significantly in the final years. Kar98ks, produced in 1944 and 1945, showed rough machining, poor finish, and declining materials quality. Some late-war Kar98ks used laminated stocks because walnut had become unavailable. Others showed crude welding and minimal finishing. The weapons still functioned, testament to the robust Mauser design, but the contrast with American production revealed the widening gap between Allied and Axis industrial capacity. The human dimension of this technological superiority emerged in veterans' accounts recorded decades after the war. American infantrymen who carried M1 Garands through Europe universally praised the rifle. Many purchased their service rifles after the war through the civilian marksmanship program, keeping the weapons that had kept them alive. These rifles became family heirlooms, passed to children and grandchildren with stories of battles in France, Belgium, and Germany. The emotional connection between soldier and weapon transcended mere utility. The M1 Garand represented reliability, effectiveness, and survival. Soldiers trusted it absolutely, and that trust was never betrayed. German veterans offered different perspectives but reached similar conclusions about American superiority. Former Wehrmacht soldiers interviewed after the war consistently acknowledged that American infantry possessed better weapons and equipment. They spoke of the psychological impact of facing American rifle fire, the the feeling of helplessness when pinned down by semi-automatic fire that never seemed to stop. Some described the distinctive sound of M1 Garand fire, the rapid crack-crack-crack that signaled American infantry nearby. This sound became associated with defeat, with overwhelming firepower that could not be answered adequately with Kar98ks. The weight difference that seemed so significant on paper meant nothing in combat compared to the firepower difference that determined who lived and who died. The legacy of the M1 Garand extended far beyond World War II. The rifle remained in American service through the Korean War, where it again proved superior to opposing weapons. The basic design influenced the M14 rifle adopted in the 1950s, which was essentially an M1 Garand modified for a 20-round detachable magazine and selective fire capability. The principles validated by the Garand semi-automatic, operation, powerful cartridge, absolute reliability continued to influence American military rifle development. Modern American infantry rifles trace their conceptual lineage to the M1 Garand's revolutionary design. The Kar98k faded into history as an example of a superb bolt-action rifle rendered obsolete by technological progress. Museums display Kar98ks alongside M1 Garands, the contrast between 19th-century bolt-action and 20th-century semi-automatic technology clearly visible. The story of why American infantry preferred their heavier M1 Garand over the lighter German Kar98k ultimately reveals truths that transcend rifles and wars. It demonstrates that technological superiority matters more than traditional metrics like weight or simplicity. It proves that industrial capacity to produce superior weapons in unlimited quantities provides decisive advantages. It shows that soldiers make rational choices based on survival rather than convenience. Most profoundly, it confirms that in combat, firepower saves lives. The 3 pounds of extra weight that the M1 Garand imposed on American infantrymen represented the weight of overwhelming firepower, the burden of technological superiority, the heft of weapons that worked every time. American soldiers carried that weight across North Africa, through Sicily and Italy, onto the beaches of Normandy, through the hedgerows of France, into the Hürtgen Forest, across the Rhine, and into the heart of Germany. They carried it willingly because they understood that this weight represented their best chance of survival and victory. When offered lighter German rifles, they refused because they had learned through hard experience that weight means nothing compared to effectiveness. The M1 Garand was heavy, but it was also devastating, reliable, and ultimately war-winning. Private First Class Robert Chen, who made that choice in the Hürtgen Forest in November 1944, survived the war and lived to age 87. Asked decades later about his decision to keep his heavy Garand rather than adopt the lighter Kar98k, Chen stated simply that his Garand had never failed him when he needed it most, and no amount of weight reduction could match the confidence that reliability provided. That trust, multiplied across hundreds of thousands of American infantrymen, helped win World War II in Europe. The mathematics were undeniable. One American soldier with one M1 Garand possessed more practical combat effectiveness than multiple German soldiers with Kar98ks. That individual superiority accumulated across entire divisions created overwhelming tactical advantages that accumulated into operational success and strategic victory. The M1 Garand was not just a great rifle, as General George Patton declared it the greatest battle implement ever devised. It was the weapon that proved industrial democracy could outproduce and outfight totalitarian adversaries through superior technology distributed into every soldier who needed it. The deeper significance of the M1 Garand's triumph over the Kar98k emerges when examining the philosophical differences between American and German military culture. German military tradition emphasized individual skill, discipline, and the Prussian concept of Auftragstaktik, mission-type orders that gave subordinate commanders significant autonomy. This system produced tactically brilliant officers and highly skilled soldiers, yet it also created assumptions about warfare that proved increasingly obsolete. German planners believed that superior training and individual soldier quality could overcome material disadvantages. They assumed that a well-trained soldier with a reliable bolt-action rifle represented an adequate infantry weapon system. The concept of equipping every soldier with semi-automatic weapons seemed unnecessary, even wasteful, to military theorists raised on traditions dating to the Franco-Prussian War. American military culture evolved differently, shaped by industrial mass production and democratic egalitarianism. American planners believed that technology should enhance individual soldier effectiveness rather than relying solely on training and skill. The concept of the citizen soldier, the civilian drafted into military service for the duration of war, influenced American equipment decisions. If American soldiers would serve for shorter periods than professional German soldiers, then American weapons needed to be more effective to compensate for less training time. The M1 Garand embodied this philosophy perfectly. A soldier with moderate training using an M1 Garand could match or exceed the effectiveness of a highly trained soldier using a Kar98k. This democratization of firepower reflected American values about equality and technology's role in leveling differences in individual capability. The economic dimensions of rifle superiority extended beyond simple production numbers. The United States mobilized its industrial capacity in ways that Germany could never match. American automobile factories converted to weapons production, bringing mass production techniques perfected in civilian industry to military manufacturing. The production of M1 Garands employed assembly line methods, precision tooling, and rigorous quality control that ensured every rifle met specifications. Workers in Springfield, Massachusetts, and New Haven, Connecticut, produced rifles to tolerances that remained consistent throughout the war. This industrial approach meant that American soldiers received weapons of reliable quality, regardless of when they were manufactured. A soldier receiving a Garand in 1945 got essentially the same weapon as a soldier who received one in 1941. German weapons production, despite its reputation for quality, could not achieve similar consistency. The dispersed nature of German manufacturing, spread across occupied Europe to reduce bombing vulnerability, created quality control challenges. Different subcontractors produced components that sometimes failed to interchange properly. The progressive degradation of German industrial capacity under Allied bombing meant that late-war weapons showed declining quality. More fundamentally, German manufacturing philosophy emphasized craftsmanship over mass production. This tradition produced excellent weapons in peacetime, but proved inadequate for total war's demands. The German economy never fully mobilized for war production until far too late, reflecting Hitler's belief that quick victories would make sustained production unnecessary. By the time Germany attempted total mobilization in 1943 and 1944, Allied bombing had already begun destroying the industrial infrastructure necessary for such mobilization. The ammunition situation revealed perhaps the starkest contrast between American abundance and German scarcity. American factories produced billions of rounds of 30-06 ammunition during the war. The Lake City Army ammunition plant in Missouri alone produced over 40 million rounds per day at peak production. Twin Cities Arsenal in Minnesota, Frankfurt Arsenal in Pennsylvania, and numerous private contractors added to this staggering output. American soldiers never worried about ammunition supply. They could fire freely at suspected enemy positions, engage targets at extreme ranges, and use ammunition liberally for training. This abundance created a tactical freedom that German soldiers never enjoyed. American infantry could afford to suppress enemy positions with rifle fire while maneuvering, knowing that ammunition expenditure would be replaced immediately. German ammunition production, while substantial in absolute terms, proved inadequate for the Wehrmacht's global commitments. German forces fighting on multiple fronts from Norway to North Africa, from France to the Soviet Union, consumed ammunition faster than German industry could produce it. By 1944, ammunition shortages affected German operations at every level. Soldiers received strict instructions to conserve ammunition, firing only at clearly identified targets. Training with live ammunition decreased, as ammunition had to be reserved for combat operations. This scarcity created a psychological burden on German soldiers, who understood that every round fired had to count. The stress of ammunition conservation, combined with facing enemies who fired freely, contributed to declining German morale as the war progressed. The human stories behind these industrial statistics reveal the lived experience of technological superiority. Sergeant William Stanhope of the 2nd Infantry Division landed at Omaha Beach on D-Day +1, June 7, 1944. His unit fought through Normandy into Belgium and was positioned near the Belgian-German border when the Battle of the Bulge erupted in December. Stanhope's squad occupied a roadblock position when German infantry attacked in overwhelming numbers during the initial German offensive. For 3 hours, Stanhope and 7 other soldiers held their position against repeated German assaults. The M1 Garands allowed each American soldier to deliver devastating fire, breaking up German assault formations before they could overrun the position. Stanhope later calculated that his squad of 8 men had fired over 800 rounds during the engagement, an average of 100 rounds per man. With bolt-action rifles, Stanhope believed, his squad would have been overrun in the first assault. The semi-automatic action of the M1 Garand allowed them to maintain such intense fire that German forces believed they faced a much larger unit supported by machine guns. Private James Hendricks of the 90th Infantry Division experienced the M1 Garand's superiority in a different context. His unit attacked German positions near Metz in eastern France in November 1944, advancing across open ground toward German bunkers. Hendricks's platoon came under fire from multiple positions. Hendricks fired his entire 8-round clip at a German machine gun position, suppressing it long enough for his squad leader to flank the position with grenades. Reloading in under 3 seconds, Hendricks engaged another target, then another. The ability to transition rapidly between targets without working a bolt allowed Hendricks to influence multiple tactical situations within seconds. He later reflected that the M1 Garand made him feel powerful rather than helpless under fire. Instead of being pinned down by superior German fire, he could fight back effectively, and that psychological empowerment proved as important as the weapon's technical capabilities. The institutional response to the M1 Garand's success influenced American military development for decades. The rifle validated the concept that individual soldier firepower represented a decisive tactical advantage worth pursuing through technology. After World War II, American ordnance development focused on maintaining this firepower advantage through new designs. The M14 rifle, adopted in the 1950s, attempted to improve on the M1 Garand by adding a detachable 20-round magazine and selective fire capability. While the M14 had mixed success, it represented continued commitment to powerful, semi-automatic rifles as standard infantry weapons. The M16 rifle that eventually replaced the M14 in the 1960s embodied different design principles, but the underlying philosophy remained. American soldiers should possess the most effective individual weapons that technology could provide. German post-war military development took different directions, shaped by defeat and occupation. When West Germany rearmed in the 1950s as part of NATO, the new Bundeswehr did not return to Kar98k type bolt-action rifles. Instead, they adopted semi-automatic and automatic rifles, implicitly acknowledging that the bolt-action era had ended. Former Wehrmacht officers serving in the Bundeswehr specifically cited American firepower superiority as lessons learned from World War II. The psychological impact of facing M1 Garand armed American infantry influenced an entire generation of German military thinking about individual weapons. The lesson was clear. No amount of training or individual skill could overcome technological inferiority in basic infantry weapons. The scholarly analysis of weapons effectiveness emerged decades after the war as military historians examined primary sources and veteran testimonies. Dr. John Ellis, in his seminal work on World War II infantry combat, calculated that American rifle squads possessed roughly 3 times the practical firepower of equivalent German rifle squads due to the M1 Garand's semi-automatic action. This firepower differential, multiplied across entire divisions, created tactical advantages that shaped operational outcomes. Ellis concluded that American material, superiority in weapons like the M1 Garand contributed as significantly to victory as superior tactics or strategy. The rifle represented American industrial democracy's ability to equip common soldiers with weapons that made them individually superior to their adversaries. The medical evidence from battlefield casualties provided another dimension of the M1 Garand's effectiveness. Analysis of German casualties showed that wounds from 30 to 06 rounds fired by M1 Garands typically proved immediately incapacitating. The high-velocity, heavy bullet created massive tissue damage and hydrostatic shock effects. German soldiers hit by 30 to 06 fire rarely remained combat effective even if they survived. American medical personnel treating German wounded noted the severity of wounds caused by 30 to 06 rounds compared to wounds from pistol-caliber submachine gun rounds or even 8mm Mauser rounds from German rifles. The M1 Garand's cartridge delivered decisive stopping power that ended fights immediately rather than leaving wounded enemies capable of continued resistance. The evolution of American infantry tactics during the war reflected growing confidence in the M1 Garand's capabilities. Early American doctrine, inherited from World War I experience, emphasized achieving local fire superiority through massing rifles and machine guns before advancing. As soldiers gained experience with the M1 Garand, tactics evolved to exploit its semi-automatic action. Fire and movement techniques became more fluid, with individual soldiers able to provide their own covering fire while moving between positions. Squad tactics developed around the concept that every rifleman was a source of suppressive fire, not just the designated automatic rifleman with the Browning automatic rifle. This tactical flexibility gave American infantry decisive advantages in the varied combat environments they encountered across Europe. The specific combat environment of Western Europe from 1944 to 1945 presented challenges that highlighted the M1 Garand's advantages. The mixture of urban combat, forest fighting, river crossings, and mobile warfare required weapons that performed effectively across all these environments. The M1 Garand proved remarkably versatile. In cities, its semi-automatic action allowed rapid engagement of targets appearing in windows and doorways. In forests, its power penetrated trees and vegetation that provided concealment. In river crossings, its reliability after water immersion exceeded expectations. In mobile warfare, its ability to deliver fire while advancing proved decisive. The Kar98k, while an excellent rifle for its type, simply could not match this versatility. Its bolt-action mechanism imposed limitations in every combat environment. The psychological warfare dimension of weapons superiority manifested in unexpected ways. German soldiers captured during the war's final months expressed fatalistic attitudes about facing American forces. They understood that American weapons superiority, combined with overwhelming artillery and air support, made resistance futile. Some German units surrendered specifically to American forces rather than Soviet forces, partly because they viewed American soldiers as better equipped and therefore more likely to treat prisoners well according to military convention. The M1 Garand became a symbol of American military power, recognizable and feared by German soldiers who had faced its fire. This symbolic significance transcended the weapon's technical characteristics, representing American industrial might and military effectiveness. The comparative analysis extends to examining what might have happened if Germany had developed its own semi-automatic rifle. German designers did create semi-automatic rifles, most notably the Gewehr 41 and the improved Gewehr 43. These weapons fired the same 8mm Mauser cartridge as the Kar98k and offered semi-automatic fire. However, they were produced in tiny numbers, perhaps 400,000 total for both models combined. They were issued primarily to designated marksmen rather than as standard infantry weapons. The reasons for limited production included Germany's strained industrial capacity, design problems with early models, and institutional resistance from conservative officers who questioned whether semi-automatic rifles were necessary. Even had Germany produced semi-automatic rifles in large numbers, they would have faced the same ammunition supply problems that affected all German operations. The failure to universally adopt semi-automatic rifles represented a German strategic failure that contributed to defeat. The enduring lessons from the M1 Garand versus Kar98k comparison extend to modern military thinking about infantry weapons. Contemporary military theorists recognize that individual soldier lethality depends on multiple factors, including weapon effectiveness, ammunition supply, training, and tactical employment. The M1 Garand succeeded because it optimized all these factors within American military capabilities. It was effective enough to dominate opponents, supplied abundantly through superior logistics, trainable for citizen soldiers with moderate military experience, and employed through tactics that exploited its advantages. Modern infantry rifles attempt to achieve similar optimization within contemporary technological and tactical contexts. The principles validated by the M1 Garand remain relevant. Reliability matters more than features, firepower matters more than weight, and industrial capacity to produce and supply weapons matters more than theoretical design excellence. The final assessment must acknowledge that rifles alone did not win World War II. American victory in Europe resulted from combined arms operations, integrating infantry, armor, artillery, and air power, supported by overwhelming logistics. Yet within this larger context, the individual superiority of American infantrymen armed with M1 Garands contributed significantly to tactical success. Every small unit engagement, every squad firefight, every individual soldier's ability to deliver effective fire accumulated into divisional effectiveness that accumulated into operational success. The M1 Garand gave American soldiers a decisive edge in the most fundamental military interaction, the rifle duel between individual soldiers. That edge saved American lives and took enemy lives, shifting casualty ratios in America's favor and making victory less costly than it would have been with inferior weapons. The weight that seemed so burdensome to soldiers carrying M1 Garands through thousands of miles of combat proved to be the weight of victory itself. Those 3 extra pounds compared to the Kar98k represented the mass of American industrial power forged into steel, wood, and devastating effectiveness. Soldiers who carried that weight understood its value through direct experience. They carried it willingly because they knew it represented their best chance of survival and their nation's best chance of victory. When the war ended in May 1945 and American soldiers occupied Germany, they carried their M1 Garands through defeated German cities, where factories had produced Kar98ks by the millions. The contrast between victor and vanquished extended to the weapons they carried. The M1 Garand represented industrial modernity, technological superiority, and democratic values translated into military effectiveness. The Kar98k, excellent though it was, represented a warfare philosophy rendered obsolete by technological progress and industrial capacity. Veterans returning home brought memories of their rifles along with memories of battles. The distinctive feel of the M1 Garand, its weight, its balance, the satisfying ping of the ejecting clip, the solid recoil of the 30-06 cartridge, became inseparable from their war experience. Many veterans maintained their connection to the rifle through the civilian marksmanship program, purchasing surplus M1 Garands and keeping them as tangible links to their service. These rifles passed through generations, each scratch and dent telling stories of survival and victory. The emotional bond between soldier and weapon reflected the trust that combat creates. The M1 Garand had never failed them when failure meant death. That reliability created loyalty that transcended rational analysis. The rifle had been more than a tool. It had been a partner in survival, a reliable companion through the worst experiences imaginable, a mechanical manifestation of American industrial power placed in the hands of individual soldiers who used it to achieve victory. The story of why American infantry preferred their heavier M1 Garand over lighter, captured German Kar98ks ultimately tells us that in combat, soldiers choose based on what works rather than what seems convenient. They choose overwhelming firepower over light, weight. They choose reliability over simplicity. They choose proven effectiveness over theoretical advantages. Most importantly, they choose weapons that give them the best chance of surviving to return home. The M1 Garand was that weapon for hundreds of thousands of American soldiers who carried it across Europe from 1944 to 1945. It was heavier than the German rifle, more complex, more expensive to produce, but it was also more effective in every way that mattered in combat. That effectiveness, multiplied across entire armies, contributed decisively to Allied victory in Europe and validated the American approach to military technology that continues to influence defense planning today. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.